All right, this is Rabbi Son, hot takes on news, pop culture, and religion, hosted by Rabbi Patrick and my son, Javon. Spiritual, irreverent, always fearless, produced by Darshan Yeshiva. So you survived high holidays, right? We got through everything. How are you feeling now that the sukkah is gone? Your house has been returned back to normal. How does it feel to survive yet another high holidays?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Real high energy there. Yeah. Really playing it up for the camera here.
Okay. I don't know. It's the holidays. Like a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of energy colliding.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't need that energy.
Well, tell me your thing about the house. Because you were like, because you're right. A lot of people come in and out of the house. Like, what's your sort of feelings about like the house and how you've got a whole thing about that?
Because it's the energy in the house is very at home energy, and then people come in like droves, and then it messes up the energy in the house.
Well, tell me what does that mean that it messes up the energy of the house?
I just feel like people have been just in the house, and it's like it makes the house not feel like the house for a little bit.
Now, can we say though that maybe when you say the house, it's really you projecting your feelings about how you feel about lots of people being around all the time?
No,
really, literally, it's the architecture. The architecture
you just don't feel like you're not so much in tune to the house as I am.
Why do you think that is?
Because me and the house, we talk, we have conversations.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the house, like people coming in, scraping up my floors, pushing my doors open.
And that's just too much for the house.
Exactly.
I see. Well, one of the things that you and I have talked about with Yom Kippur is the idea of, asking for forgiveness and, sins and all of that. But you kind of took a spin on it that's kind of like the Seinfeld idea of the airing of grievances. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that.
What did I say again? I don't remember.
Well, we were talking about how I sort of have to weirdly say please forgive me for any sins I've committed. You kind of had this idea though that we should basically be confrontational with people about things that they've done.
I thought you were going to say the other thing where you can basically send the whole year then apologize, then people just get over it. I thought that's you was going to bring up.
Oh, well, you bring that up.
Yeah, I feel like if there's a holiday that's giving you an out, go throughout the whole year, then make old people at the beginning of the new one.
Do you think that would work though?
I mean, you said your apologies, whether or not they accept it or not.
Well, you're supposed to actually make amends. You're supposed to
build
back trust.
But how much could you really do to someone in a year?
I mean, I don't know. There's some pretty terrible people in the world.
I mean, then they'll just be terrible. I don't know. I mean, you can't really make amends in that short of a time period anyway.
Well, right. I mean, the idea is that it's supposed to start a process.
Oh, I mean,
if I do something to you and I ask for forgiveness, you can obviously forgive, but then we have to build the relationship back up from where it once was before I committed a sin against you. It's not just a one and done type of thing. Only God forgives on that level.
I don't know.
But you and I got into this conversation because one of the things we talked about is if everyone publicly said what their sins were, it would cause chaos because then everyone would learn the terrible things that they were doing to one another. But you suggested the idea of maybe we just all have it out. And then that's part of the holiday. You just air your grievances just like the Festivus holiday in Seinfeld, and then you call it a day at that.
Yeah, you should air your grievances. You can't keep sitting on things, letting things, brew until they eventually spill. And then when they spill over, it's you've been holding all this anger and this animosity towards someone instead of just letting it out and not having that. Because the more you sit on it, the more it's going to build, and then the worse it's going to be. So you might as well air out the grievances, tell people exactly what they did, exactly how you feel, and where they went wrong. and then y'all can go from there.
So catharsis should be part of the high holidays experience on some level.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, well, we'll see if anyone ever does something with that. But okay, we have Rosh Hashanah, we have Yom Kippur, and then we have Sukkot. So of those three holidays, which one did you like the best? Spoken like a true clergy child.
I'm trying to think like what was done. I mean, I remember like the Fort holiday.
Yeah, Sukkot.
I don't remember the other one.
Because you shook the lulav this year, which is something.
I mean, I did it last year.
Did you do it last year?
Yes, I did.
I didn't remember you doing it last year.
I remember doing it last year.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I did.
I think that's the quirkiest of the holidays, right? Because we can all understand Rosh Hashanah as like, something that you would go to a service of some kind, and we can understand the idea of like the symbolism of the round challah and honey and sweet, and like it's pretty low level, right? And then you get to Yom Kippur, and if you have some kind of concept of like sin, then you would understand the concept of like a forgiveness holiday. Sukkot's the one that I feel like is a bit of a southpaw. Like it just kind of comes at you and it's like, and there's huts.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that one.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Any particular reason why?
Nah, because there's not much to get into. Like, as like, yeah. I mean, there is like, a sermon, but there's not much like,
lengthy prayer services
exactly.
And things like that. Got it. I see. Okay, cool. Well, if you have a favorite of the big three holidays, let us know. I'd love to hear from you. So, speaking of people we'd like to hear from, if you like date honey, date syrup, things like that, you will absolutely love Date Lady. So Date Lady is great. We have a video that we did from the Rosh Hashanah cheese board video that made its way onto TikTok. I think we have about 3,000 views of that. I don't know if that's a lot of views or none, but Date Lady sponsored that video and it was great. So go on ahead and get yourself some Date Lady date syrup. She did not sponsor this video. We also didn't ask her to, but we wanted to go on ahead and promote this one more time because we've been making salad dressing out of it. It's fantastic. You don't have to use that much and it feeds a crowd. And also, if you like the idea of having your product waved around, we could have your product here. So if you have a product of some kind that you think would appeal to a Jewish audience, or to, Black Gen Z, whatever, or to middle-aged dudes like me, whatever, please reach out to us and we'll take a look and see if maybe we can sponsor. So you had something you wanted to talk about, which had to do with the literacy rate.
Yes.
So lay it on us. And then I have some things to say about Jewish education.
Okay, now this, I believe, is from the National Literacy Institute. Pretty sure. Okay, so globally, the overall literacy rate, according to, the National Literacy Statistics, global literacy rate overall for individuals aged 15 and above, the combined literacy rate of both the genders is at 86.3%. Males in this group exhibit a literacy rate of 90%, while females closely trailing at 82%. Notably, substantial variations exist between countries. Developed nations consistently boast adult literacy rates of 96% or higher, while least developed countries struggle with an average literacy rate of just 65%. In the United States. Okay, on average, 79% of U.S. adults nationwide, are literate in 2024. 21% of adults in the U.S. are illiterate in 2024. And 54% of adults have a literacy rate below a sixth grade level. 20% are below a fifth grade level. Low levels of literacy cost the U.S. up to $2.2 trillion per year. 34% of adults lack literacy proficiency. Massachusetts was the state with the highest rate of child literacy. New Mexico was the state with the lowest child literacy rate. New Hampshire was the state with the highest percentage of adults considered literate. And the state with the lowest adult literacy rate is California. That's shocking.
The lowest literacy rate is California.
The state with the lowest literacy rate is California.
Because they're taking into account people maybe who don't have English as a first language, maybe things like that, or...
I mean,
Because that could be possible too. It could be a lot of people who immigrated who don't speak English.
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's best to assume what's obvious.
Right.
And in the world, the U.S. ranks 36th in literacy.
Okay, gotcha. So what percentage of people were the under fifth grade?
Under fifth grade, 20%.
20%. Okay, so 1 in 5 adults is not reading at the fifth grade, at the sixth grade level, basically sixth and above.
Are not reading at the grade level.
Are not reading at sixth and above.
Yeah, basically
20%. Right, 20%. So what I'd love to know is the third grade level. That's the one where I think it's really interesting.
Why on the third grade level?
Because if you look at literacy among people who are incarcerated, it's generally the third grade level. That if you cannot read at the third grade level or above, you don't have the ability to read to learn. Right? So basically you can't teach yourself. And apparently, according to a special ed teacher I know, and this is like one person, so I'd have to actually look this up, but it's something like if you can't read at the third grade level, the likelihood that you are going to be incarcerated is like a perfect pipeline.
Oh, it's funny that you bring that up.
Oh, really? Okay. Because this was not planned at all.
The second part is that.
Okay, tell me about it.
The relationship between literacy and poverty.
Go for it.
Which, is probably not going to go into what you were talking about, but also
overlaps in some way. Yeah.
The nexus between poverty and literacy is pronounced with these two challenges often interlinked. In impoverished regions, educational opportunities are frequently scarce, exacerbated by the necessity for struggling families to prioritize immediate income generation over sending their children to school. The majority of countries and the lowest literacy rates are concentrated in South Asia, West Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa regions, also characterized by a prevalence of the world's poorest nations. Ooh, that word's a big word. Skip over that. Gender gap further compounds the issues of literacy, as nearly 2/3 of the approximate 7.8 million global illiterate adults are female. And I think that speaks more to like certain countries not really prioritizing female education.
Right.
So that's just obviously why they're illiterate, because they're not taught they should learn.
Sure.
Which
that makes sense.
Bad.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a positive.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Thing at all, because that's you're more easily manipulated.
Right. Yeah, it's it would be interesting to see what the delta on these things are. Meaning, is the literacy rate really bad in certain areas, and then for the most part fairly the same in others, right? Do the outliers, you've been taking statistics and stuff in school, and do a few bad apples really greatly lower the overall world literacy rate, or is it a pretty even slide of first, second, third, fourth? Is it an even amount of lack of skill? I don't know. But it definitely seems female literacy is the issue.
In poor countries. But history is, women were never taught that they should learn, and every time they did learn something, it was oh, she's a witch. She knows more.
It helps that we've been watching Agatha all along, so it's been a very witchy household the past
so
weeks.
But as far as the United States, with 21% of adults in the U.S. being illiterate in 2024, that's
wait, what percentage is it?
21.
21. Yeah, 1 in 5 people are illiterate in this country.
21. And then 54% of adults are reading below a 6th grade level.
That's still pretty bad. third grade apparently is the...
But that's over half. That's over half
huge.
Adults.
Yeah.
And if you can't, because the reason this came up, and the reason I even brought it up was because people were talking about how come people are easily go along with rhetoric from
Right.
certain politicians
Right.
that's like, or information that is like false. It can be proven false, but they, you know, think otherwise.
Right.
I mean, you would think otherwise because you can't understand what it is if you were to read it.
Sure.
If you could read it.
Sure.
So I think people need to give, people grace sometimes. Like sometimes it's not about like, following behind something or just being like, just going with the flow and like, cause people who can like read and like comprehend what they are reading.
Right.
And like know, truth from fiction would obviously be like, okay, this is a lie.
Right.
And someone who can't do that, like it's hard to put yourself in a place where like you can't be. Like you understand what I'm saying? Sure. If you never learn how to like read or write or comprehend what you're reading, like you can never like put yourself in those shoes of like,
sure,
how would that, like, because you have to ask that question, like, how would that, and then you can never like actually answer that question because you would actually never know. You would like actually never know, like, what it is. And it's like, I think that's different from like if I was to like read something on like advanced, physics or something.
Right.
I wouldn't understand that. But like, could I read it? Could I like get a general understanding? Like a general understanding of it? Yes. But that's like something different between like me reading like, I don't know, something factual and then someone else reading it and they're like, oh well, that's still wrong because this person said that.
Right.
Like, they can't really understand it. So I'm like, sometimes just give people grace because a lot of people are really combative and just think people are just like not on their level.
Yeah.
And that leads to like, people feeling superior.
Yeah.
And then, feeding into stereotypes about, poor people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that that's valuable. And I think that's spiritual wisdom as well. The idea that, if there are these barriers that people are facing because they're illiterate or for any reason, who are we to, deeply judge that when if they were given the opportunity to engage with something, to learn more about it, to whatever, might they feel differently about it? If there was a compassionate person who would sit with them and talk to them and not judge them and make them feel bad and, all of that. Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 54% of adults. That's over
huge.
Half. That's over half. So you have to think about, because I do feel like this leans more into like the older side of the spectrum. And like, I'm just gandering.
On behalf of the older side of the spectrum.
Yeah, I'm just like, thoughts. I mean, not like you're old. I'm talking about older than you.
Okay. Well, that's good, I guess.
What? Like, I'm just saying, I'm just like, gandering. I don't like,
Do you think the older people tend to have higher illiteracy rates and younger people tend to be more literate? Is that what you're saying? Or
I'm saying like time wise.
Okay.
And historically.
Okay.
Like, with like more rural schools, like not really all the funding there. Mm-hmm. And you also have to think about, things like, Jim Crow when some like schools were closed. And like that, didn't really affect the wealthy people, but that did affect, poor black people, poor whites, and, all the other people who were there. So like that time away from school in those like, major like milestones in school, like, reading at a third grade level.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't see that for like this generation. Not that it's not happening, but I do think the older side carries into that, factors into that more.
So let me ask you this question then. So speaking of like generational differences, so I'm concerned actually about the literacy rate among younger people, not in terms of an inability to read, right? So like I'm with you on there's probably a lot of older folks who were discriminated against and were in bad schools and weren't, education wasn't prioritized in their families, things like that, right? And that's like one set of people, right? I'm wondering about a different set which is you have the ability to read, but you don't have the ability to comprehend. So, like, for example, people who they look at a social media post, let's say, that's written as opposed to an image or video. And it's just like they read through it so fast that then if you said to them, like, okay, now tell me what you just read. Tell me what the source of that information is. What is the context of that? Did you read that and then form an opinion on it? And if you did, like, what is that opinion and where does that opinion come from? Did you just read that thing and suddenly now you know what to think about something? Or did you have a bias or past information or something like that? Because I feel like, not that I have a lot of experience with like younger people reading, but when I've been working with bar and bat mitzvah kids, I've noticed there is this sort of like, why can't I get through this? Like just with reading English, not with even Hebrew's a whole other, but that's a whole other ballgame. Like I forgive everyone on that one. I'm probably not reading at the third grade level of like Hebrew sometimes, but I've just noticed with like reading like a paragraph, it's like this tendency to just try to like get through it, like get to the point. Like, why can't it just be bullet points? Why can't, instead of bullet points, why can't it be a picture? Instead of a picture, why can't it be a video? And then, like that thing. So I just worry about that. Like, what happens when you can read, but your brain is just moving so fast and demands information so fast that you're not willing to put in the time to like actually deeply look at something.
I don't know. I do think the whole like social media thing, I do think that sometimes comes in as bias. Because like, with the like people in this time, politics and like, or like when it comes to the internet and like your favorite like artist or something. Or like, you're in like in the favoring opinion of someone differing opinion. And then like I see it a lot where people they say something and it's like clear as day to me.
Right.
Like exactly what they mean. Like they like wrote it out.
Okay.
Period. And then people just take and make something totally different from what exactly was stated.
Right.
And like trying to make it like its own thing. But I'll be like, well, no, that's not what they said at all. This had like what you just wrote had nothing to do with what they said. You just took it out of context. And I think you read what you wanted to read.
Sure.
And you didn't like, I don't want to say like you didn't understand it because I'm like not them.
Right.
But like it seems to me like you didn't understand what they just said.
Or the trolling where you see someone post a video that's like, I'm making this up, information about cats. And then below it they go something like, well, you don't know anything about cats. And it's like, someone will comment to be like, did you even watch the video? Like this person's a veterinarian and they know blah, 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 blah. Or it'll be a title that's clickbait and it'll be clickbait to get you to watch it. And then someone comments on it, not realizing like, yeah, the point is to watch it to learn the thing. Like it's like they don't understand the idea of like a hook. So someone will put in something like 5 facts about Israel that no one ever told you. And then their comment is like, I was told everything. It's like, you're missing, like, that wasn't a literal statement. It wasn't like someone actually can look into your brain and like know everything that you know about a topic and then make a video just to tick you off. Right? Like, it's like they're not in on the joke,
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people are, the sharpest spoon.
The sharpest spoon. I hope there's no sharp spoons.
Yeah, sometimes people are, the sharpest spoon, the roundest marble, like, but like, I don't know, because sometimes people don't get like satire.
Right.
Like, and they just like think it's real, but like, you can clearly tell, like, yeah, I mean, I do like sometimes like on basic, you would think basic known information,
sure,
that people would know that they like, oh, that's wrong,
right?
Like, and it's like, no, that's real. That's what's going on. That's what's been going on. And then like you're saying it's false, but it's like there's evidence to the contrary. Like,
Well, this is like the rumor that was like totally a trolling like experiment where someone started the thing about the flat Earth
mm.
and how like actually that took off as a legit thing that people began to
Or like
believe.
birds aren't real.
Birds aren't real is great. We had a neighbor for a while who had a birds aren't real like flag or something in their backyard, and I so wanted to go over there and just be like, I know, like I see you there. That's awesome. Good for you. Like we should hang out.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes, I don't know. I mean, the flat Earth theory could like it made more sense back when there, wasn't really that much science.
Yeah,
but then like yeah, I mean, been disproven already. But I guess some people don't, like to lose.
Well, it gets mixed up with the Bible because the biblical conception of the earth is that you have a flat earth and then you have the firmament. So this is the waters above and the waters below. And that there is a kind of, it doesn't state it this way, but basically it's kind of like there's a spiritual energy that holds, that like separates the waters, right? So if you have like I imagine it almost like two mixing bowls. So you have like two mixing bowls like this, and then you have a plate in the center. Okay. And this sort of almost like gravity is holding all of this in suspension. And then if you look at the Noah story, it's the idea that the 40 days and 40 nights, but it's actually 150, like whatever, that's a whole other thing. That why did that happen? Was it a flood like we would understand a flood? No, because we would understand a flood as the rain pours in and it raises the water level and then you have a flood. The way they understood it wasn't a flood because they had seen floods before. Like this wasn't new. It was the idea that the firmament, both above and below, was going smack like that. And that sort of was the conception of how the world looked for the longest time, was some sort of like realm above, realm below, flat land that we all.
I mean, but that wouldn't make sense.
That would what?
That wouldn't make sense.
That wouldn't make sense.
No, because
to ancient people.
Okay, no, yeah, to ancient people.
Right, that's
like,
that's what I'm saying.
Serious, no, I'm just saying.
Sure.
Okay, the Earth is flat, right?
Okay.
And then there's something below it and above it. That's
right.
Water, right? This will never get up here because it's gonna splash out. Like, you know what I'm saying? Unless like you believe like it's gonna come up the side. Like, you get what I'm saying?
The idea is that it came through. So it's more like, I can't even, like almost like a sponge. Like the middle part almost was like a sponge, and that the waters that were from the below, came up and through, and that's like geysers basically. And then the waters above the top part, the firmament, come down as rain. So that's the way they understood that, and that it was God that held together the energy or whatever, that they kept everything separate. Otherwise, it's kablamo. But yeah, but that's why like some of the stuff with flat Earth, suddenly I started seeing the pictures and things people post. I'm like, that's actually not even accurate for what the Bible thought it was. Like they're using that as the reasoning. They're like, well, the Bible told us, and I'm like, even your picture of what it's supposed to look like.
I mean, the Bible also told you, like, Noah got all the animals on, one boat.
So it's on my mind because that's the Torah portion for this week.
I mean, but that's like, let's get into that.
Oh, you want to get into that?
Like we need to all right, go into that.
Okay, let's go into that.
I mean, I don't got questions. I just got,
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, because I just feel like that story is so unbelievably impossible.
Okay.
To ever have happened.
All right. Well, bring it.
I mean, because okay, you have to think about it.
Okay.
One man.
Okay. This is where literacy actually is very important. So go ahead.
Yes, mind you, people. I don't read religion. It's not me. I'm not the expert.
He only lives in the house.
Yeah. But
he has the Torah right behind him.
Yeah, sacred. Doesn't mean I don't have to read it in the house. I absorb.
He talks to the house.
Exactly.
Yeah. The house tells him.
Exactly.
Okay.
No, because you have to imagine.
Okay.
You have to have every animal that exists in that time period. Get them on a boat. And you had to build the boat. big enough to fit all those animals. And there's like no way
Mm-hmm.
that he got all those animals onto that boat by himself.
So it's interesting because one of the things that really I think tips people off, if you really want to go like deep micro level, is that when Noah is asked to put the animals on the ark, one of the things he's told to do is to put a certain number of non-kosher animals and then 7 of the kosher animals. Okay, well, the funny thing about that is the idea of clean and unclean animals, it doesn't exist yet in the story because God hasn't revealed the Torah yet. So how would he know what's clean and what's unclean? And the term clean and unclean doesn't mean like dirty, gross, whatever. It means fit for the sacrificial system. And then on top of that, when the waters, part and all of that, and he's able to get out on dry land, all of these other things. The thing that he does is he plants a vineyard. Okay, so you have the creation of wine that way. Well,
I mean, how do you plant a vineyard?
How did he plant a vineyard? How do you mean?
It was after the flood?
Yeah, after the flood.
Okay.
Yeah, after the flood, there's dry land. Him and his family come off the ark. They reestablish, the human experience, and he plants a vineyard.
I mean, who else is there?
His wife and his children and his sons and his sons' wives.
So that anyone else
and
alive?
Their children. Yeah.
Is there anyone else alive?
No, beyond their family, no.
So how do more people get on Earth?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, is that the authors weren't really concerned about that, because the more interesting part of it is he plants the vineyard and he makes wine, and then he gets drunk, and then there's a whole scandalous thing that goes down after that, which, happy to tell you, PG-13 story here. So, and so there's this thing of drunkenness and, a bunch of debaucherous type stuff that happens potentially. It depends on how you want to read what happened. Debaucherous, like
no, I don't need like what happened though with debaucherous.
What happened? Well, that's the thing, is that it's only alluded to. So it could be that one of Noah's sons slept with him.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why I was saying, like, you might have to blur that one out. There's a possibility that Noah was castrated. So it depends on how you want to read it.
This should not be blurred out. You need to know that this is knowledgeable.
This is.
You can't run from your religion.
That's right.
You got to take it all, good, bad, and ugly.
And I'm with you. And I think that going back to your literacy thing, Jewish illiteracy is a problem, because this story is actually way more interesting than like animals and boats and science, because something happens there. And in the ancient world, there were a lot of stories about the sons of a main god castrating the father god in order to ascend to power. So there's actually a question of like, is this a Jewish way of understanding that myth? And then there's other sort of ways that it's interpreted, whatever. Well, so 2 of the sons basically cover the father in the way, because they see him naked and he's in this altered state, because who knows what's happened, right? Because it's not explicit in the story. So what they do is they take a blanket or a cloak or something, they put it over their shoulders, and then they walk backwards towards their father and then just sort of like toss it on him, because they want to spare him the indignity of like them looking at him while they cover him. They're trying to be as modest as possible, right? So basically, once Noah kind of recovers his faculties a little bit, he then curses his grandson. His grandson's name is Canaan, which is Canaan. It's the Canaanites. So you have this story of a pre-flood society. They're all like vegetarians. They don't eat animals, whatever. They then are offering sacrifice, and you have to have certain animals to offer those sacrifices to. And part of sacrifice is also wine is a sacrifice. And so then you have that in the story. And then you also have this thing about cursed be Canaan. He will be, a servant, a slave to the other family, basically. And so What do you get out of that? Well, you get a priestly text that explains where do we get sacrifices from and why was it okay for the Israelites to conquer Canaan. So it's a backstory. It's like a prequel to what is actually the more interesting story to them, which is what is the proper way to serve God? And what is the origin story of the Jewish people? They're reading into past myths their story. And you have to look at like why is the Noah story different from the other, flood deluge as they call them, like deluge stories. And that's how. Because it's this question of like what did the priests see of themselves in that story?
I mean, so how did more humans get on Earth?
Incest.
Yeah, so shouldn't people be looking a mess?
They didn't think of it. They didn't have those frames of references that we have now.
That's what I'm saying.
They didn't have genetics. They didn't have.
I mean, you not having genetics not gonna stop your, you doing all that, business. Like your kids have like a club foot and like,
Oh yeah, no, totally.
Long arms and like just look a mess.
And this is how you know, like that when they wrote these stories, they weren't writing them with those things in mind because they had to have known, back then that certain types of relationships were going to lead to genetic problems and things like that. Because you have in the Bible these codices about like this person can't have sex with this person or with this person or whatever. And you could kind of read into it that some of that probably had to do with an understanding of if the offspring of those children.
I mean, but why didn't God put it in there and say something?
Like, don't do that early on?
Yeah.
Because their understanding. So you have to keep remembering this isn't, the Jewish texts are not about what those characters are experiencing. It's about how we read those stories. That's what they're thinking about.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about like, where was God in all this?
Like, where was God in what? The flood story?
Yes. Or like how do you say, yeah, Noah go do this thing? And then like question mark afterwards?
Okay, well which thing? Because there's a lot of things in that story.
I mean, get the animals, get them on the boat.
Okay.
And then what happened after that? What did he say after that?
What did God say after the flood?
Exactly. So like what was going to happen to how was there going to be more people on the earth? Like, I need some more explanation.
Yeah, here. God doesn't. So the Torah is very terse. It only tells you what it wants you to know. So basically, they come off the ark. The 7 Noahide laws are given. So these are the laws that apply to all of humanity. There is no Torah yet, although there is this kind of mystical teaching that actually the Torah existed long before it was ever given at Sinai, and like maybe Noah actually had it. That's whatever. But anyway, he gets off the ark, and it says that there is a bow in the sky, and that the bow in the sky is a symbol of God's covenant with humanity, that the earth would never be destroyed by a flood like that ever again. Okay, so meaning like that collapsing of the firmament, not like there would be continuous floods, like that's just part of the cycle of nature, but you wouldn't have this cataclysmic destruction. By the way,
I mean, but why did God allow the cataclysmic the whole thing in the first place?
Because humanity had become so corrupt that God regretted ever making humanity, and so God actually had a regretful heart about it.
So they give you the green light to go kill a whole bunch of people?
So what Noah does, or excuse me, what God does is he looks at all of humanity. Sorry to say he, God, he, she, they, it, exclamation point, whatever you want to do. Hebrew's a gendered language. I didn't write it. God looks at all of humanity, finds that Noah is, and the word that's used is that the phrase is Ish Zadik Tamim. So he is a righteous man in his time. The rabbis took that as a huge joke because it's kind of like grading on a curve, right? Like if everybody in your class gets an F and you get a D, you're the genius, right? So that's how they looked at Noah, because Noah turns out not to be a great human being. The worst thing that he does is that he actually obeys God. So here's what I mean by that. when God says, build the ark, put your family on it, here's the number of animals, hop to it, Noah just does it. If you look at other prophets and other people who engage with God in the Jewish story, they tend to argue with God. So, for example, Abraham in the Sodom and Gomorrah story, he actually argues, why are you going to destroy this city? Like, what if there are 10 good people in the city? Are you going to destroy the city for that? Or, you know, there's this idea of like the prophets saying like, but what will they think about you in the other cities if you destroy your people in the desert for being bad? What will they say back in Egypt about you? Right? So there's the thing about Noah is that he doesn't disagree with God. He just goes with it. So it's an amazing flip on the idea of what makes a decent person.
Oh, so you don't question God and you don't die. Wow, that is so great.
Well, exactly. That's what the rabbis thought. They rolled their eyes at this and said, like,
I'm rolling with you.
The rabbis the rabbis basically felt like Noah wasn't a great person. He followed God, but it didn't make him a good human being. And in fact, God is grading on a curve by letting him and his family live.
Yeah, he should have killed,
the whole thing, maybe.
Exactly.
Right? Maybe then, just started over entirely.
Exactly. He could have.
Sure. I mean, for some reason, that's the way it played out.
And there's like no way Noah was like the best person at that time. Could we not, like, where are the children? I'm pretty sure the children weren't out there, stabbing people and like robbing people and like all of this. So like you just killed a whole bunch of kids and a whole bunch of innocent people and then left like, Noah, who was already a mess. So then it's like, that's not just, and you're just like, that's not a great thing to do.
Well, here's a quirky one. So all the human beings die except Noah and his family, right? Okay. Everything on the earth dies, right? In the flood. It all drowns, right? It all gets destroyed, okay? But there's one type of creature that lives through the whole thing. It is witness to the whole thing. Fish. The Torah never mentions the fish getting hurt. So in theory, the fish are all just swimming around. Like there's some sort of like
octopus so that means you should
watching the whole thing happen. That says you should be a fish?
That says you should eat fish.
Oh, that you should eat fish.
Yes. And the fish. No, seriously, like the whole thing about,
Oh, the shellfish thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, if shrimp, like if God thought that shrimp and lobster were so bad, like they would have died.
Interesting. Okay, that's a take.
So yeah,
we did promise people hot takes.
Yeah, just like imagine if like Noah fumbled it and like didn't get like some of the animals drowned and he was like, oh, what am I gonna eat? And then he only had the fish. There you go. I just feel like shellfish should be allowed.
All right. Well, that's one. So, all right. So, hopefully I've helped explain at least some elements of the Noah story.
I mean, still didn't explain to me how people got on the earth. Why exactly that children died and that the earth got flooded and children died because apparently children weren't good.
Yeah.
Apparently
they were so everyone was so corrupted that it just wasn't. It was like,
I mean, but that's a corrupt thing to do.
Yeah.
Like that's very, very morally very, very dark gray character.
Oh, it absolutely is. I think of it because again, the stories exist to challenge us and to encourage us to think about our own humanity. So you think about those times in life where you're working on a project and you've just spoiled the thing entirely. And then you blame everybody else. And yeah, you can blame everybody else, but maybe you sabotaged it a little bit. The rabbis thought that part of the problem was that, humanity was given free reign to live, but it was never given instruction of any kind. So what happens when you have a community of people who are just kind of living to live, no rules, anarchy, whatever? They're powerful. They build cities, but they have no sense of divine instruction or no sense of morality or rules or boundaries. And so the rabbis I think the Noah story is a thought experiment about what would that look like, and it would become utterly irredeemable. Humanity only works if there is some sort of sense of, right and wrong, some sort of sense of boundaries, rules, things like that. But even so, like, even if you try to wipe the slate clean, you can't. Like, it's impossible because Noah is a bad guy, and humanity continues to suck even after that.
But like it
just sucks under different terms.
But you're gonna kill a whole bunch of people that you didn't give instruction to. Mm-hmm. It is just like, that's weird.
Right.
That's weird. Like, it shows you didn't give any instruction, and then you're just like, oh, they're bad because they don't live up to my expectations, even though I never gave them the expectations to live up to.
Well, that's just it. That's why it says that God had a regretful heart, meaning God actually saw God's own flaws in the decision making.
Exactly. So you should have been so flawed. So just like, people should take this as a lesson. God killed 1 million people. You eating shellfish once in a while, it ain't gonna hurt. Just think about that. Right. I'm just saying.
Well, on that note of being inspirational, do you have an inspirational quote for us this time?
Rhetoric is the art of ruling minds.
Rhetoric is the art of ruling minds.
Yeah. Plato.
Interesting. I don't know how inspired I feel by that.
But and why did I use that quote? I mean, we're talking about literacy.
Yeah.
And the ability to, understand.
Yeah.
And if people can't understand, what leads, rhetoric, what sounds nice, what, someone saying what you already agree with, and you, like, there's no way that different. Because you can't understand the information that's, opposite of your already biased opinion.
Right.
So if someone is telling you, this thing happened that you already believe, it's just like, reinforcing that. Mm-hmm. And it's also driving fear into you.
Right.
In this, like, I don't want to say scarcity because that's a weird word to use, but like this fear of that other thing that you really can never actually comprehend because you literally cannot.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that's where the base of the quote comes from.
I like it. So, literacy matters to be able to think and understand other people. Jewish literacy matters to understand what any of this is about and not take it the wrong way. And,
Yeah, and Jewish people should eat shellfish because, remember, God flooded the earth and killed 1 million people. So you can eat your shellfish.
Not endorsed. All right.
Not endorsed by him, by the
Thank you, Javon.
I'm just saying. Like, I just wanted to prove my point.
Thank you to our sponsors at Darshan Yeshiva for making this content possible. Darshan Yeshiva provides beginner-level online Jewish learning, including the very popular Conversion to Judaism program, with sponsoring rabbis and students all over the world. Start your Jewish journey any place, anywhere, and anytime with our conservative, reform, reconstructionist, Jewish renewal, humanistic, and post-denominational rabbi mentors. Become the Jew you always wanted to be with Darshan Yeshiva.